Antes de la publicidad, hoy Marta Iser nos trae a otra gestora. Marta, hola de nuevo.
Hola de nuevo, Raquel, ya estamos en el espacio de gestión de patrimonios y además estamos con AllianceBernstein. Me acompaña el Senior Portfolio Manager de la gestora, Ton Wijsman, y con él vamos a poner el foco sobre todo en su fondo dedicado al sector salud, a healthcare, y vamos a mirar también cuáles son los subsectores dentro de salud que ahora mismo está ponderando la gestora. Ton, thank you so much for having us a few minutes.
Sure, it's a pleasure being here.
Ton, over the last 3-6 months, the stock market has been really volatile. What kind of factors are influencing right now the investor sentiment at this moment?
Yeah, and of course it's not new what I'm going to say, but it's important to stress that higher interest rate, the fear for higher interest rate is an important element. Inflation is up. Supply chain constraints is an issue, and of course, last but not least, we're coming out of the COVID crisis and we're entering a new crisis. We're entering the Ukraine crisis. So there are a lot of moving parts that are influencing the market, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and investors don't like uncertainty, and that is important to realize that you have to maneuver as an investment manager between all these unknowns, and that makes it interesting again in the world.
Is the situation really challenging for managers? And when you consider all these factors, what kind of characteristics do you look for in your companies in order to navigate all this volatile situation, these volatile markets? You wrote us a graphic, we will be able to see it.
Yeah, no, I think that of course we have seen a shift away from growth stocks to value stocks, and in value space, specifically with the higher energy cost and the oil crisis, the gas prices are up, oil prices are up, so that segment of energy and commodities have done very well lately. What we try to focus on is to continue to have balanced portfolio for sure, but if you really look forward and for the longer term, we still find very interesting opportunities in the United States. We look for quality companies, we look for growth, we look for companies that have, if necessary, pricing power, so that whenever inflation pops up, whenever we see higher input cost, they are able to raise their prices. And we find, in the United States, we find these companies. US is still a market for growth, for quality, for interesting sectors like technology and healthcare, and that's where we continue to focus on.
Mm-hmm. And could you give us some examples of companies you think could be interesting at a long-term horizon in the current market? We could see a graphic too.
Yeah, longer term. And of course we have seen in this picture the longer term sector performance of the various sectors within the MSCI World. MSCI World has 10-11 sectors, and it shows that over the last 10 years, over those 15 years, two sectors are definitely very strong: healthcare and technology. And we still think that in this space you can find interesting opportunities. Some of these companies have been re-rated lately. They were perhaps a little bit expensive and they were growthier, and the market is moving away from growth stocks because of the threat of higher interest rates and inflation to more value stocks. So money is moving from that sector to the energy stocks and to commodities. But we still believe that we can find very good pearls, very interesting growth companies in the space of healthcare and technology, companies with unique products and services, companies with pricing power. These sectors are perhaps less cyclical and have long-term demand. Think about in the chips industry, the microprocessors. Everything is today IT, big data, the cloud. Is important, electrical vehicles, and also the whole energy transition. Of course, we want to move away from oil and gas to more sustainable segments. Also, in the energy transition, you need a lot of chips. You need not a lot of microprocessors. That's just one example. And last but not least, I would say that the COVID crisis learned us that good healthcare systems are so important. It's so important to good hospitals, to have good drugs, to have breathing apparatus, to have vaccines. I mean, and this industry is here to stay, and we believe we get long-term very good opportunities there.
Mm-hmm. It's really important, all the research in healthcare. You mentioned healthcare and technology, but looking at healthcare more specifically, it seems such a broad sector. Can you give some examples of the various segments of this sector?
Yeah, a lot of people think about healthcare as pharma. You know, drugs you get from the pharmacy, but it has so much more content. Artificial knees, artificial hips, heart transplants, robotization. You now have a robot to do operations, and of course drug testing, the laboratory equipment, veterinary drugs. You can have in the new space of gene technology, genetic and DNA sequencing. If you can really identify the genetic structure, the DNA structure of a person, of a disease, of a virus, you can also look at the deficiencies in the DNA structure, and you can correct that with new technologies called so-called CRISPR-Cas technology. And biotech companies, some of them are very specialized in inventing new drugs in that space. So it's very broad. It's not only biotech, it's not only pharma, but it has so many different faces, and it's important to maneuver and find the right companies there.
Mm-hmm. And the biotech subsector is often mentioned as the most promising, innovative, and fastest growth healthcare segment. Do you share that opinion?
Yes and no. Again, biotech, there are hundreds of biotech companies in the world, perhaps thousands, listed companies, non-listed companies, small ones, bigger ones. But some of them don't even have a drug on the market. So this binary situation, is the drug approved or not, is something we as investors and even some doctors, the FDA, don't know if the drug is going to be approved or not. And that is a risky situation. There are biotech companies that have 4 or 5 drugs, commercial drugs on the market, and with these commercial drugs, they service a need. There are diseases that were not treated before because of the lack of drugs, and biotech filled that space, and there are many biotech companies that don't have a drug. It's a binary situation. We rather invest in companies that have something on the market and can continue to grow and use their profit to develop new drugs.
Mm-hmm. And the COVID crisis seems behind us, at least at the Western world, but we open a big question here. But if it is behind us, what could it mean for vaccine producers?
Yeah, there are, of course, it was amazing how fast we got a new vaccine drug on the market. Within a year there was a new drug, and of course the governments in the US and Europe supported the companies like Moderna and BioNTech and some others. There were viruses 1,000 years ago, there were viruses 100 years ago, there are viruses today, and there will be new viruses. So there will always be research for new antiviral drugs and vaccines, and we have to support that, and the healthcare industry is ready to come up with it. But we have to see how that pans out, and hopefully we are ready to come up with vaccines on time in order to prevent something that we have seen over the last 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm. And finally, AllianceBernstein has a healthcare fund with strong characteristics. We will see it in a graphic now. What is the background for this success?
I think our fund is a long-standing fund. It is very broad-oriented. It doesn't only have pharma, it has all the various sectors we have spoken about. It has biotech, it has technology, it has laboratory equipment, veterinary drugs, so it's broad-based. It has a philosophy that we want to invest in companies that have solid earnings growth, and the earnings, the profits that come from these companies is reinvested profitable for future growth. And that pans out to a very strong characteristics. And one of the characteristics we've shown on the page is the so-called up capture, down capture. When the market goes up, so the healthcare space, healthcare stocks go up, we participate, we do a little bit better. When the market goes down, because the market is volatile and sometimes investors move away from it, we see that we are really defensive. And this up capture, down capture profile is, I think, for investors always important to consider. And hence, the fund has 5 stars with Morningstar. Our longer term track record is very solid. It has a team that has experience. These portfolio managers, 2 of them are supported by 2 specialists, and a sustainable responsible investment analyst, a quant analyst, and 6 specialty researchers specialized in healthcare. We visit, the association, the U.S. Cancer Association convention. We talk with patients, with doctors, with specialists. So it's in-depth research, coming up with the best ideas, and we have 43 stocks in the portfolio, and we are very happy with them going forward. And I think it remains an interesting segment. You have to be specialized, you have to focus, and that's what we'll continue to do.
We will follow the evolution of this fund. It will be a pleasure to have you here in future. Thank you so much, Ton, for being here.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Y nosotros, Raquel, te devolvemos la conexión a Platón. Nos quedamos con esos mensajes, con el foco puesto en el sector de la salud, mirando algunos subsectores dentro de esta especialidad, como son las compañías biotecnológicas, en un momento en el que, abrimos un gran interrogante a si realmente hemos dejado atrás la crisis sanitaria. De todas formas, la investigación, la innovación, el desarrollo que se pueda seguir haciendo en este sector va a ser clave y, por supuesto, las inversiones en él van a ser muy importantes.